The next step of the process is putting these two sides together. We want to attach them. If we were simply to put them together and smooth them out, they'd stick for a little while, but they wouldn't stay. To make sure that two pieces of clay stick together really well, you need to slip score and smear them. It's also very important that both pieces of clay that you attach are close to the same amount of, have the same amount of moisture in them. If one piece is very dry and the other piece is very wet, they will stay together for a little while, but as the one piece dries more, they will come apart. So I have my two pieces. I'm going to attach the two edges together. I like to get both sides a little bit wet. You can either use a little water, or I have some slip here, which is basically just water and clay mixed together. Kind of makes a muddy, almost like a glue for your clay. I put a little bit on each side. And if I get a little too much, I can remove it later. So I get those two sides, the little slip on them, and then I need to score. What scoring is just simply roughing up your edge. Paper clips work really well. You can use other tools that have a point on them. It's important not to be too light-handed, too delicate with this. You want to make sure that those scratches get in there. I just like to go around and scratch the opposite. I don't scratch this way, I kind of scratch the opposite way, the opposite direction. And I do the same thing on the other side. Once you have the two pieces scored completely with a little slip on there, you're going to be putting them together. Don't be afraid if your score lines go over the edge. We're going to smooth that out later. Alright, so I have my two pieces that both have the score lines, and I'm going to fit these together. By having the score lines going both kind of in the same direction, they almost act like a zipper. So when I put these two pieces together, the lines will line up and help hold them. Once I get them put together, I want to give it just a little wiggle all the way around, really make sure that they are joining. And then once I get them pressed together, the last step, very important step, is smearing them together. The goal is so that we can't see this seam. Right now it kind of looks like a hamburger. We want to really smooth this out so it's one uniform sphere. So I'm going to take my fingers and gently press, smooth, and smear the clay from both sides. Okay? Doing one side and the other side. And right now it's a little sloppy, but I'll go back and smooth that out. If you do find that there's extra slip oozing out, at this point you want to kind of dry it off. You don't want a big, sloppy, wet seam. So you'll go all the way around, gently pushing. Try hard not to squish your clay sphere. Really get that clay to move. Since my clay is fairly wet, it moves pretty easily and quickly. Once I have that all smoothed together, then I'm going to go back with a dry, fairly clean finger. You don't want it to be all full of dried up clay. And you'll kind of smear out the seam, get rid of some of this extra clay, and go in more than one direction. You know, going from sideways and going up and down to get it smoothed out. You don't want to completely forget about where your seam went though. As you're smoothing, it's kind of good to have just a light line because we're going to need to know where that seam is later on. That seam will create, on the inside it's still kind of rough, so we need to know where that is because when we continue with our project that's going to be important. So we'll go all the way around and get this smoothed out, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step.